The election has now come and gone, and we do have a new prime minister here in Canada. And for this video, we're going to break down what exactly those Liberals are promising for when it comes to housing and affordability moving forward for the next 4 years. I'd love to hear your thoughts as we go along on if you believe in what these promises are going to do for Canada when it comes to housing, and if you actually think it's going to make a difference, especially in major cities like Toronto. And jumping over to stories.com, this says what Mark Carney's election win means for Canadian housing. And actually, a quick summary here is that the newly re-elected prime minister has promised to address the housing crisis by doubling residential construction to 500,000 homes annually. Key proposals of Build Canada Homes, build affordable housing, eliminate GST on new homes under 1 million for first-time buyers, and developers are hoping for more pro-development. Let's break down each one individually. And during that acceptance speech, Carney did reiterate his focus on housing. We'll need to think big, act bigger, do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations, and that's referring to that post-World War II where they were building those bungalows, and you do see a ton of them in and around the city of Toronto. Time to build twice as many homes every year with entirely new housing industry using Canadian technology, Canadian skilled workers, and Canadian lumber. On the campaign trail, both Carney and Poilievre paid a lot of lip service to housing solutions. Again, tax incentives, cutting red tape, and forming that WW2 World War II-esque National Housing Corporation. And now it's time to see how this party will continue along and stack things up as we go forward. Carney said he will double Canada's current rate of residential construction over the next decade to reach 500,000 homes per year. And here's what Canadians can expect from him on the housing file. And just to keep in mind, about 250,000 homes was the most ever built in a single year as far as back as we can track. And if we are considering doubling that, one of the major things that will have to come into play is the interest costs for developers. And I don't think that's been mentioned here whatsoever, but if developers don't get the financing to build and those pre-sales aren't happening, which at the moment of recording this haven't exactly flown off the shelf in Q1, then we may not be seeing those builds come to fruition unless the government significantly steps in. Carney's creating the Build Canada Homes, which is a government entity that will build affordable housing, catalyze the housing industry by providing $25 billion in debt financing, $1 billion in equity financing to Canadian prefabricated home builders, and we'll get to that in a second, and issuing bulk orders of units from manufacturers to create sustained demand, and $10 billion in financing for affordable home builders. When we talk about prefabricated homes, what they're referring to are those modular homes where basically they're built in a factory, plopped onto a plot of land, and essentially they just connect the services to them, and they're prefabricated, and you can just walk right in and live in them. Now, the issue with that and the challenge with that is that most buyers right now that are looking to purchase homes, even though they're considering them affordable, may not be looking for those types of properties. And if we look at a city like Toronto, and I'll talk to Toronto because that is where I sell real estate. In Toronto, buyers are looking for homes that they can grow into. Typically 3-bedroom homes, 2 stories in some of the best areas, and parking as a bonus. Prefabricated homes just aren't a thing here in the city of Toronto, especially because we really don't have that land unless they're going to take up parking lots or the current parks. But if we're talking about parking lots getting built out, those are generally turning into condos at the moment because it's more density on specific corners in the city. And they go on to mention that after the Second World War, the developers that Stories, which this article is on stories.com, has spoken to, are doubtful similar programs will be successful in today's more complex building climate. And of course, the cost to build has gone up significantly since even the last few years when everything was shut down. If we take a look at another big promise was the elimination of GST on new homes at or under $1 million for first-time home buyers, a move intended to make purchasing a home more affordable for this disadvantaged cohort. And while spurring new construction across the board, tax break is widely welcome, but been criticized for excluding large portions of the market, especially in comparison to Poilievre's proposed GST break, which was on homes up to 1.3 million for all Canadians if elected. Now, I do want to unpack this a little bit because this GST break only applies to new construction properties. So if you're going to, for example, a builder and they're looking to build a new subdivision and those are new homes that are being built, that's where that GST tax break comes into play for both parties. This is not something exclusive to Liberal or Conservative. That GST tax break was on new home builds. So if we're looking at anything on the resale market, and that's again where home buyers are looking to purchase, especially in the city of Toronto, because there just really aren't that many new builds here in the city that are detached or semi-detached houses. Essentially, the home buyers are not really getting any tax break on that whatsoever, especially new home buyers. Now, this could come into play if you are looking to purchase a new condo from a builder. And if you look back at any of my other videos, it does break down how the new home builds are about 40% more expensive right now than the resale market is currently. So if you're looking to purchase either a condo under $1 million and one is a new building and across the street's an older building, you're looking at around a 40% premium for the same type of property. And it would probably be a smaller unit regardless, just based on how the new sales are going for those buildings. And some of the additional tax incentives proposed by Carney include reintroduction of 1970s era tax incentive called the multiple unit rental building MURB, which encourages the construction of rental buildings by allowing rental apartment investors to deduct from their personal taxes not only expenses incurred from things like minor building repairs, accounting or legal fees related to the property, or even the purchase price of the building, but also the depreciation of the building's value. In turn, the investor could receive bigger tax refund and enjoy a tax sheltered investment. And breaking that down, when we talk about building MURBs, is that these multi-unit properties, which are great and in some of the best areas of the city, are not exactly making homes more affordable for the purchaser. Now, they may supply more rental properties for those looking to get rentals, and that would definitely bring down the cost of rentals in those areas. If there's more supply, generally it brings down the cost. But if you are looking to take a single family home and split it up into multi-units, the development charges, the cost of construction, and the overall time are making those projects less and less attractive for investors, especially with the anti-flipping tax that does have a 1-year timeline here in Ontario at the moment, and BC is 2 years. So if you're a builder and you're looking to take a property that really needs a lot of love and a lot of updating, that tax will probably disincentivize a lot of builders from bringing it up to speed and making it actually livable for the next person. Now, cutting the red tape, Carney is sticking with the Liberals' Housing Accelerator Fund, which intends to improve upon it by making the program more transparent, reporting on municipalities' progress to implement reforms that will allow more housing to be built. This program has been largely criticized, and it will ideally cut municipal development charges in half for multi-unit residential housing and work with provinces and territories to make up lost revenue for municipalities for a period of 5 years. This one's a bit interesting to me because anytime the federal government tends to step in on the provincial level and then on top of that the municipal level, generally there is a trickle-down effect for each party. And if we consider how development fees are working, they generally go to the city of where those developments are happening. So for example, parks, any kind of road works or anything like that, that's where those development fees are currently going. If the cities just remove them, which would definitely help in the cost of building, then the question becomes, where does that excess funding come from to make up for the lost revenue in those parts? And that's something that's going to have to play a factor if we are considering removing those development fees. Where does that additional funding come from to make up for the difference in the amount of revenue generated by that income? No different than a land transfer tax. If the city was to remove the double land transfer tax here in Toronto, which I don't think it will because they just added a third one in over $3 million, then what tends to happen is that that lost revenue tends to come from somewhere else. So for example, property taxes would increase. And it's one of those cat and mouse things where if you're a buyer, you definitely want the savings on the purchase side. But then also keep in mind, you do become the property owner. And if the taxes are going up to offset the cost of things, then you will be paying the property tax in the future for however long you own that property. So something interesting to see how that dynamic works as we go. And last piece, speaking with developers leading up to the election, stories.com overwhelmingly heard calls for change to the status quo. Regardless of who came to power, developers want to see more pro-development policies and slash red tape to provide more robust financing and incentive programs. And I think we can all agree with that, is that what we've been doing in the past few years hasn't exactly accelerated the building. And a big portion of that is due, again, to higher interest rate costs and the cost of borrowing for these builders and developers, which do make it more challenging to pass along any cost savings to the end user. And ultimately, if these projects aren't selling right now, that will have a big factor into our supply in the coming years, 2027, 2028, and 2029, for example. Especially if you're looking at condo projects, low rise tend to have a quicker turnaround. But again, the price difference between a new build and an older build or a property that's currently in existence is generally about 30 to 40% right now. So it's up to you to decide if that premium is worth it. And if there's any savings there, will it make up the 40% difference? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And I'd actually like to know if now that the election's over and you've been maybe sitting on the sidelines to make a real estate decision, will this play a factor in your decision moving forward in 2025? If you ever want to discuss your plans for Toronto real estate, click on that first link down below, scan the QR code. I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.